Welcome to the very first Instructional Story Design Roundtable. I'm going to show just a little video here. You may have seen this video already. Let's go. Hello, story designers. Since the publishing of my first book, Instructional Story Design, in 2020, it's been a pleasure hearing from so many of you and how story design is transforming your training. Nice! But let's face it, sometimes you hit roadblocks and need some help pressing through. A storytelling community, people that understand your challenges, that encourage you to keep going, and share solutions that can help you overcome those roadblocks. That's what I'm talking about. This is what the Instructional Story Design Roundtable is all about. So bring your questions, your expertise, your stories. We'll talk as a group and in breakout rooms with a global community of story designers who are transforming the training experience. Whether you're a seasoned designer or new to the industry, register for the roundtable and connect with story design. I can't wait to see you there. And here we are, and I'm seeing you. This is wonderful. I just want to kind of set kind of the tone for our time together. This is a roundtable, so in essence, we're going to be spending some time talking with one another. And we're going to be doing that in some breakout rooms and so forth. And I want to thank you also for just kind of like several of you gave me an introduction of yourself at the beginning and how you came in contact with instructional story design or with me. And it's really a pleasure to like be in the room with so many people who really believe in the power of storytelling for training. I asked you some questions at the beginning when you registered. And so I've compiled the answers that you have provided, and I'm going to give you just a view of like who is on this call. First of all, we have, a nice little bell curve of your confidence level in telling stories for training. A little heavier on the confidence side, which I'm happy to see. So we'll have a lot of opportunities for those of you who are a bit more confident to share with those who are brand new to story design. Barriers. Some of you, the biggest barrier I think was just mastering that method right here, mastering the method. Some of you just wanted more practice, and I'm going to show you some free ways to do that. Resources and time were a barrier for some of you. I hope that by the end of this session, you'll feel a little more confident that the resources and time it takes to create stories isn't maybe as much as you might think it is. Subject matter experts and stakeholders together made the second highest. And so we are going to spend a breakout room talking about those stakeholder conversations. And then some of you had some questions about development. We don't have a specific breakout for that, but we will have time at the end for you to have the breakout of your choice. So we can talk about your questions and specific things that you might have. And so the reason why I wanted to create this roundtable was because so many of you have reached out to me, talked to me about story design, and I was like, man, we just need to get together. We need to get together and help each other out. So I wanted to make myself available and then also give you a chance to meet one another. One of you said regarding stakeholders, and I just had to laugh about this, understanding the SME needs for a project when they do not understand their own processes. I know you cannot relate to that, right? Having a stakeholder who does not know their own processes.
Hi, Sam. Okay, let me do this.
Oh, hey, Latina, I think you're off of mute there. And then what do you hope to gain? You want ideas, conversation, and creativity. So ideas, definitely we're gonna get some ideas about how to incorporate story design into your training. Conversation, a lot of that's gonna be happening today, and creativity, there's a lot of creative people on this call. So it's gonna be fun. Practical strategies and techniques for creating stories and solving common problems. Absolutely, we'll be talking about that today. And then I hope to gain information on how others implement instructional story design in their companies. So there's going to be a lot of networking going on today. And so I hope that you get what you hoped to get from this session today. All right. Several of you were like, I just want to master that method. So let's talk about the story design model for just a moment, especially for those of you who have not read the book or you just ordered the book. The book itself is really kind of a all-inclusive. It's a well-documented process for incorporating stories into your training. And so if you've read the book, then this will be very familiar for you. If you haven't, then this is going to be just kind of an overview for you. I want you to think of for just a moment about your favorite story. What is it about that story that attracts you to it? If you wouldn't mind answering that by putting it in the chat. Or you can unmute yourself and just talk to me about it. So Jody, I care about the characters and the people. Thank you, Jody. Jessica, the unexpected, sure. The surprises. Wendy, it's relatable. I personally relate to it. Okay, so we got some really good on point things here. Amy, the suspense of the storyline. Hi, Amy, great to see you. Kate, good stories always bring some emotions. Yes, absolutely. My favorite stories have sparkling dialogue. Nice. I think we underestimate the power of dialogue, and we can use that power in our training. Suspense. The Princess Bride, because it's based on historical facts. Julie, I think you need to be educated a bit on what's reality. ROUSs are not real. I'm so sorry to tell you that. Good stories have a clear structure. Yeah, and we kind of know what that structure is innately, don't we? Yeah. The Sun and the Wind competition by Aesop's Fables. Nice. And Aesop's Fable, thank you, Robin. It's so nice to have you on the call, Robin. And so many people are here because of you. Thank you. Aesop's Fables, yeah. And there's something wonderful about Aesop's Fables because they are, in essence, a learning story, right? We're teaching something. A twist sparks questions and interest. Why are these things happening? Care about them. Entertaining. Yeah, they're entertaining. Hoping for the right outcome and providing resolutions. Nice. Takes me on an emotional journey. Lost in the story. Lose yourself in the journey. A great story makes me want to learn more. Yeah, absolutely. Apollo 13, the joint exploration and the strategy to reach toward the same goals and solve the great problems together. Yeah, that's a pretty nerve-wracking plot line, isn't it, Cody? Okay, good. This is awesome. So we're gonna and if you could take all of those things that you've just said and like put that in a story for training, Mal, wow. I mean, that would be amazing, right? Learning would be so engaging, so energizing. It would make you care, right, about what's happening. So let's get into how to make that happen. So for those of you who have read the book, Instructional Story Design, or you've taken a workshop or, met me at a conference or something, what are the two elements of story that we're going to really focus in on? What are those two elements? This is a test. See if you've internalized the book. Marks like stories where they can see the consequences of decisions made as the story unfolds. Yeah, that's cool. And that's a nice little setup for like scenario design, right? Okay, so I've got silence. So I'm going to give you the first one. Relatable characters. That's the first one. Okay, we're going to focus on how to create relatable characters for our story. And where do these relatable characters come from? Right? We can't just like pick them out of the air, that we've got to have some sort of way, some sort of methodical way of like creating these characters. They come from what we call an audience profile. An audience profile. And this is just a synopsis of who your audience is. And you can ask some really simple questions, and we'll get into that in just a moment. That's where your characters are going to come from. And you add to that what Kate has said. Thank you, Kate. Conflict. That is the second element, strong conflict. And I use the word strong here because it needs to be as strong as possible. And where does this strong conflict come from? It comes from the action list. The action list. And so if you've read story design, you know exactly what that is. And that action list, which is what we're going to talk about in just a moment, will guide your learners to do observable actions. Kate, you are one step ahead of me. You go. You have done your homework. If you put these two things together, if you put relatable characters into strong conflict, this natural thing happens within the person who is consuming that story. And you know what it is because you've experienced it yourself when you have watched those stories that you love so much. It's that desire for resolution. Like, I want a desire for resolution. I need this to be resolved in some way. And when you've got that, man, you've got them hooked, right? Now that you've told the story with relatable characters and strong conflict, they have this desire for resolution, but there's still this gap, right? We still need to move them to action. We're trying to connect that story to the actions that we want them to take after they've taken the training. Yes. Thank you for loving my book, Kate. Thank you for the prompts. Yes, training is what completes that circuit and connects the story to training. Awesome. Awesome, awesome. All right. Now, before we get into that model, something happens beforehand, right? You have this conversation with somebody who is requesting training. They need 4 hours of effective mobile gamified training for the entire company in 3 weeks. A modest request. So let's look at, let's make this our first breakout session. And what I would like for you to share, you're looking for 3 things when you're talking with a stakeholder. Okay. Do you guys remember what those are? What are you looking for when you have that conversation with the stakeholder? The first one is a business outcome. There has to be some sort of outcome in the training, right? A business outcome. Second one, root problem. What root problem are you solving for? And lastly, is training the ideal solution here? Okay, does it involve knowledge? Does it involve skills? Does it involve attitudes? If it does, training can have an effect on those things. Cool, Mark. So this is what I'd like for you to discuss. Your strategies for talking with stakeholders to identify the root problem, the business outcome, and the ideal solution, if training is actually the ideal solution. And some of you put in your comments that you also are having difficulty getting buy-in from your stakeholders for storytelling. So discuss all 4 of these things, discuss one of them. Take a rabbit trail and just, hop on down that trail because this is your time. So I'm going to give you some 8 minutes to talk with one another. So you can take a screenshot of this if you like. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to put you in some breakout rooms. Are you ready? All right, as people are starting to come back in, I'd love to hear your insights. What kind of insights did you get from that discussion? Feel free to unmute yourself, share your video, talk with us, or put it in the chat.
For ours, all of us were pretty much new to instructional design. We're coming in from a lot of different backgrounds, but some of us from education. So I think that it was more of a discussion. We had a couple friends who shared some of their thoughts that they had in instructional design backgrounds, and so we tried to mine out some great questions from her. But I think that it was quite a challenge to I found it a challenge to actually engage people in thinking about storytelling as well as instructional design, because oftentimes they're what they think their business outcomes are, they haven't done root analyses, right? So part of the problem is they think they know but they don't, and that really what the real causes of the problems are, and then they only want one solution, which in your discussion with them, the solutions that they want are a band-aid to the actual training needs that are needed. And then even the third level to that is they think most of the time they think that stories are good for happy little anecdotes, but they don't think that it's a front way to engage with story. So with training. Those are the obstacles that I find when having stakeholder conversations.
Yeah, thank you, Cody. And did your group offer some relief to that pain? Did they give some help on solutions on how to overcome those things?
From what I've been able to see was the main thing was just drawing out their story, right? What is their stories, and then trying to redress as much as possible with them was, I think, some of what I had. I don't know if anyone else from our group wants to jump in.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to say it, because really, when you think about the analysis process, what you're doing is you're unearthing a story. There is a story happening in the real world, and you're trying to unearth that story and help the stakeholder to see that story themselves. And so by drawing it out of them, I like the way you put that, not only are you finding out what the story is, but you're also developing a relationship with that stakeholder. So it really comes down to that human touch, right? That human connection. And do they trust you enough to help them see what the real problem is? That's beautiful. Anybody else?
Yeah, we talked a little bit, gave my perspective from a healthcare industry. My root problem in my business outcome is always almost very, very clear. The rationale for why we're doing something is usually related to regulatory compliance, or I need somebody to have, competency in X, Y, Z. And so we're going to do some front loading before they go in for a clinical skills session. And so we sort of provide them with that. The thing that we started to talk about just towards the end of the time there is the hard part sometimes is if I don't know enough medically about what I'm writing a story about, articulating to the subject matter expert and the stakeholders about how I'm going to write the story and to get enough information from them to help me have enough context to write it can sometimes be difficult. Mm-hmm. So by training, I'm a paramedic, so my medical knowledge is pretty vast and been doing this for a very long time. So I have developed even more knowledge than what I would have learned in my ordinary training. But occasionally we get into things and I'm just like, I need more information or more context. And so being able to communicate with the subject matter experts and the stakeholders in a way that allows me to understand the content and then be able to regurgitate a story around it or build a story using some sort of story arc or something like that, that can be an area where I'm looking to develop my own personal skill in being able to communicate with those people.
Yeah, that's good. Again, I hear this drawing out of right. the story, right? Drawing out the root problems and drawing out enough of the story so that you're able to then tell the story yourself. And that comes along with some basic skills of just asking the right questions, right? Asking the right questions of those people and developing that relationship. So ask the right questions and develop the right skills for that. Awesome. Thank you so much. That was well said. Denise says that stakeholders need to have a way to connect with the concept you're trying to sell them on. They need to see the why. not just the what.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Sophie, getting definition on whether the whole company needs the same level of training. Yeah. And so that gets down to, and then your deadline and review. And if there are any risks with not hitting the deadline, or if only a % of the company trained within the time frame will cause detriment. Good, excellent.
Our group talked about the how do you measure whether or not your storytelling training is successful? Because if you have stakeholders who are just unsure about training, like they think of storytelling as something that you use for engagement, but not necessarily for learning. And how do you measure the improved outcomes, the actual solution happening of your storytelling training versus other more non-storytelling versions?
Patsy, that's awesome. Did you guys have a discussion about that? Did you have any solutions?
We started a discussion about it. We didn't get to the solutions before the time was up.
Yeah, so let me share one story of my own. I remember when I first started helping this company with their storytelling efforts in training. Storytelling is a proven it's proven scientifically that it helps people remember things. It helps with learning, and so you don't really need proof that storytelling works. You do need a good storytelling method for knowing that. But I did want to know. So I did want to isolate the effects of the story in some way in my evaluation. So one way that I did that, I did it in several ways, but one way was that in the survey, 6 to 9 months after training, I included a picture from the story, and there was a speech bubble, but the speech bubble was blank. And it just said, what is the person saying in this speech bubble? And 93% of those surveyed were able to say what the person was saying, it was a compliance course, what policy they were compromising, and what they should have done instead. From a picture, from a story. And so the fact that people walk away from story-based training and what do they say? They say, remember that story because the story contains everything that's needed for behavior change. And so if they're going to remember that story for a long time, then they are going to remember the behavior changes that are needed that are contained in that story. So I don't know if you're looking to isolate the effects of a story in your training or just show some proof. There's a whole chapter on that in the book. What chapter is it? That talks about, proving the effectiveness. I think 12 and 13. So, well, thank you for sharing that, Patsy. What else? Something here from Mark that reminds me of some of the best lessons I learned in my Army days. They all came from stories told after the fact. Very interesting. Thank you, Mark. And Mega, strategies to communicate with stakeholders, an intake form, needs analysis form, asking these basic questions to elicit those answers. Excellent. That's a great idea, Mega. Set up time to converse with them and encourage them to take 2 steps back, forget about the how, and think about what problem they are trying to solve. Excellent. So these are just some practical things that you can do to set it up so that the stakeholder has to engage in some way with you at that level. Those are great suggestions. Awesome. Okay, well, I hope that you're getting some insights from that. I want to look back at the model. Let's look at the story part itself, relatable characters and strong conflict. After you've had this conversation with the stakeholder, you're able then to, and you've determined that training is going to be beneficial, it's going to help solve the root problem. Then you're looking at designing this story for the training based on relatable characters, or with relatable characters and strong conflict, based on these two other pieces of analysis. Who is your audience, and what are they supposed to do as a result of training? So I'd like to share with you the audience profile and the action list are the two things you have to walk away from your analysis phase with these two items in hand. So I'm going to show you an example of an audience profile and an action list. Okay, so let's say that you are training a group of sales account managers. Okay, so one question you could ask is, who are these people that I'm training? Like, what's their title? Number two, they value meeting the customer's need and making quick sales. So what do they value? That's another good question to ask on your audience profile. What's their position? What do they value? Second one, what are their current circumstances? So their current circumstances that they have new leadership that insists on a more storytelling sales method. I advocate for that. So they're being trained on this new way to sell. This is their reaction to those circumstances. They feel like they don't have time to learn a new method. It will slow them down. They feel like their current method, which is more product focused, works fine. And then lastly, what do they fear? They fear letting the customer down and losing the sale. Okay, so already in the audience profile, do you see some conflict? Just within the audience profile, you see who these people are, what they value, and you see their reaction to their current circumstances. Already some conflict is starting to surface, right? They want to make quick sales. But what do they feel? They feel like a new method is going to slow them down. So there's an internal conflict there. Now I want you to think about this audience for a moment. Just think about them. I want you to think about a person that might fit this audience profile and draw out of this audience profile a character. Okay, and I want you to define that character that's kind of forming in your mind as you're reading this audience profile, just in 4 ways. Give me their name, their personality in 1 word, how he or she feels in this story that you're going to create, knowing that it's going to be a story filled with conflict, and how he or she deals with conflict. So in the chat, 1, 2, 3, 4. Make up a character that fits this audience profile. What's the person's name, their personality in a word, how they feel during the scene, and how they deal with conflict. Give you some time to either chat that or unmute yourself and tell us.
Can I ask a question?
Questions are welcome.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I know that this is somewhat hypothetical, I'm guessing, right? You've just kind of plucked these out of the air.
Yes. Well, kind of. They're kind of based also on a case. So.
Okay.
Yes.
Because each one of these has a reason for why they exist, right? So there's a lot more backing to why they might feel that they don't have time, usually because they are held to performance standards that threaten them that if they take too much time on something, they will suffer the consequences of a poor performance review. So oftentimes it's not that necessarily the individual doesn't want it. It's that they're under a pressure, and so they naturally reject that which would cause them harm. But creating the ideal environment where the exploratory mode is engaged in the mind of the client would be partly shaping the leadership on who allows these sales, who's structured how this sales manager works. And you really can't get there if you're trying to persuade the employee who doesn't actually have any power. You know what I mean?
Yep. So there's a whole change management. You've just kind of outlined a whole change management plan here that involves not just people being trained, but like all the people supporting that person as well.
Yeah, because you can't expect someone to do something if they don't have the freedom to do that. And so persuading them to try a storytelling concept within their sales technique could get them in trouble, because it's going to take them longer to practice that, to get good at it and to learn it. And what their real problem is, it's not that they don't like it, it's that they're afraid, you know?
Yep. Excellent point. I love hanging out with you guys because you bring up these wonderful things. But let's take this at face value. Let's just take it at face value for what it is, knowing that full well that those kind of situations probably do exist behind the scenes. And let's just read some of these characters. We've got Bob, who loves his job because it's scripted and second nature. He loves routine. All his calls are predictable, and he hates surprises. That's a great description, Robin. You're already setting up some potential conflict here. That's awesome. Ryan, the resistor. That sounds like a superhero. Feels like, why should he change something if it's already working? Tells his boss yes, but goes back and does his own habits. Nice, Jody. Denise, Fred, ambitious, anxious to make top sales numbers and has a distinct fear of failure, hates having to compromise or find middle ground with others, shuts down and refuses to work with others. Nice, Denise. Definitely sensing some potential for conflict there. Julie, Ronnie, charismatic, frustrated because he has built a process he feels is effective and well received by customers. He challenges the change because he refuses to buy into the new process without a solid understanding of the long-term benefit and what's in it for him. Good. But you're going to provide that for him, aren't you, in your training? Lashunda, Will Powers. Oh, very cute. Outgoing, annoyed, pushes back and or does things his way. Good. Sally, the sales go-to person. Brash, wants it now, frustrated, shouts. Good, Keith. Amy, Wanda, confident, annoyed, ignoring the conflict and doing as she feels best, regardless of what's asked of her. Ellen, she is shy. She doesn't feel like she can do it. She really doesn't do conflict, tries to avoid it at all costs. So nice, Chris. We've got like very different people that are showing up here, right? But all of them matching the audience profile in some way. Okay, good. Craig, perfectionist, feels like this is a waste of time. It's undermining the great work he's already done. Craig deals with this by being resistant, but realizes he has to get it done regardless if he's going to continue being on top of his game. Okay. We see a little bit of giving in to what's being done here. So cool. These are great. So we have Nate, we have Jerry, we have Brad, we have Martin. So many great beginnings to character descriptions based on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points on an audience profile. So creating a relatable character for your audience, you'll know them even better than this. You'll know those kinds of things that Cody brought up earlier, that if they are wrestling with they've got two things being told to them. You need to get it done now, and also you need to spend some time honing your craft. So you'll know all of those things about your audience and be able to incorporate them into the audience profile and emerge with a really relatable character. Awesome. Good work, guys. Okay, let's look at an action list. Okay, be aware of our new storytelling sales method. No way, Jose, that is not an action list. That is Not an observable action. So I'm from the theater. I have a theater background, and so if I love directing, and so if I were to tell Jessica, Jessica, I want you to cross stage left and be aware of our new storytelling sales method. Okay, could you do that for me? Go ahead. No, she can't do that. You can't watch her being aware, right? So what I would come back to the subject matter expert with is, what does somebody do when they are aware of this new storytelling sales method? What do they do? What do you see them doing? And then create a list of observable actions that they can actually do. And so I'm going to show you just a little piece of that. So we have this point number 1, discover the story behind the customer's need. All right. Still not quite observable, but that's a big action, right? We're going to drill down to 3 smaller actions. Here's one of them. Ask the potential customer to describe their biggest pain points in detail. Now, if I tell Jessica now, okay, I want you to cross stage left, and I want you to ask the potential customer to describe their biggest pain points in detail. Can I watch her do that? Absolutely. It's observable. I can watch her doing it. Take notes of words and phrases that have an emotional overtone, and then ask questions that prompt the customer to describe how they feel about their current situation. So if I take people down this path, ABC, they're going to fulfill everything that's up here in number 1, right? Discover the story behind the customer's need contains these 3 actions. So put your action list in logical order. I often use an outline because stakeholders understand outlines, and so do subject matter experts. They understand that these are subpoints of this larger point. So I really encourage you to do that. Now, if we were to take this action list and put some conflicting actions, let's take your character that you've visualized already and put them in direct conflict with all 3 of these sub-actions. Okay, so you've got the first point, ask the potential customer to describe their biggest pain points in detail. What is something the character could do with their customer that would be conflicting with that? And more importantly, and this gets back to what Cody was saying, why are they doing it? Why are they doing that conflicting action? Okay, so I'd like for you to take a moment. What time is it? Time flies when you're having so much fun. So let's take 5 minutes in our group. Screenshot this. I want you to talk about creating conflicting actions to the action on the left, and then a description of why they are doing that conflicting action. Okay, you got it? Let us go to our breakouts. Ready, set, go. Hi, Jody Stewart. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Good. Where are you from today?
Stamford, Connecticut.
Stanford, wonderful.
And another formerly theater person, so I'm appreciating your move stage left and ask the question.
Awesome. Thank you. Stage left, which would be that way.
Exactly. And then I still have to hold my hands up and go, oh yeah, that's left. Okay.
Cool. I'm so glad you joined us today.
Thank you.
My goodness, guys, time flies so fast when you're having just a great time with people. Let me ask you just to share some quick thoughts with me regarding the conflict or the conflicting action and the why that person is doing that action. Any insights? You might want to unmute and just talk to me, or you can put your answers in the chat as well.
Vance, it's Jody. Can you do me a favor? Go back to the prior slide for just a moment because I missed that 3rd column that you had. So yeah, that
Hold on.
It went away. Sorry, missed what it was. I'm sorry. I don't.
There we go.
that. So why are they doing it? Okay, the conflict and then the why. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you. You know, we were talking in our breakout room about salespeople, you know, as I think that you brought them up as our case study on purpose. They tend to be emotional people to begin with, and they are expressive in many ways. I've been teaching sales and selling for 25 plus years.
Okay.
So when I design for them, their resistance and their character, their conflict comes up with mostly fear, right? They don't do it because they don't want to ask for the biggest pain points because they're afraid to find out that there are pain points. And why that's your conflict and your why. And then I think where you're tying this to is, where do you use a story to get them to buy into the benefit of asking for pain points? Is that where you're going with this?
Yeah, absolutely. So the story itself will contain all that conflict, right? You'll see Tony, the sales guy, who is in this conversation, having opportunities to do these things, right? He has the opportunities to ask the potential customer to describe their biggest pain point in detail. He has the opportunity to take notes. He has the opportunity to ask questions, but he doesn't take them. He doesn't do those. He does something else instead. He either ignores these things, or he falls back on his old thing of, well, let me show you our product features. You know, he does these other things. Why does he do them? Perhaps he's insecure. Perhaps he feels like, you know, this is, I'm in a time crunch. Perhaps I have another sales call in 5 minutes. You know, whatever that reason is, it matches what's happening out there in the real world, right? Then you're showing them that story, giving them the opportunity to see that story play out. What could he do differently here? Give them time to think through it. Give them time to reflect on that story before you just train them and tell them everything. Give them time to digest that story and see, okay, well, if he would have stopped for a minute and asked a question of this person, perhaps this story could have ended differently. Okay, so we see also the fallout in the story of his conflict with these actions too. That's a great set. Jody, I'm glad I had a salesperson on this.
Always add a theater person. We back each other up.
And a theater person. Absolutely.
There you go.
Patsy, conflicts we discussed: leading the customer and not listening, not empathizing, not comfortable talking about pain points, only accepting what the customer says on a superficial level. Excellent. Excellent. Just glosses over. That's great. That's great. Okay. I know many of you have to go now. If you want more practice doing this, I encourage you to join me for the storytelling tour. It's free. It's 8 weeks, 1 hour a week of taking on little practice sessions, just like we just did, April through May of 2021. And you can do that at think.beyond.com/storytelling-tour. Here, I'll put it in the chat as well.
I'll be there.
Awesome. All right. I know it's at the end of the hour. I was hoping that we would have time at the end to ask more questions, but perhaps the next roundtable needs to be 15 minutes longer. I'm not sure. But any feedback that you have for me about this roundtable, this is the first time I've done it with you guys. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. Thank you for the comments. If you would like to do it again and continue this conversation as you are getting into your storytelling groove, let me know. Tell me about it, and I will schedule another one. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Mwah. Story on.
Do you want me to give feedback for like email or on LinkedIn, or how do you?
That would be fine. Yep. Email, LinkedIn. You guys can link in with me if you haven't already. Give me some feedback on how you'd like the next roundtable to be different, or what kind of questions you'd like to talk about at that point.
Cool.
Thank you, Cody.
This was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Stay warm.
I'm sorry. One more question, Rance.
Yes, Latina.
Are you going to send out that recording today just to everyone that was on the attendee list?
It won't be available today. I will post it and send it to everybody that was on the attendee list.
Okay.
It'll be
That's perfect.
sometime this week. Sometime this week.
That works. I just
All
want my
right,
team to
listen.
see it. So thank you.
Yes, tell your team hello for me, and I'm sorry that they're without power.
We'll do that. Thanks, Rand.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, Rand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lashunda. Have a good
This
day.
was awesome.
Oh,
You
I'm so
too.
glad. I'm so glad. Where are you calling from?
Madison, Wisconsin.
Madison. We got a lot of Wisconsinites on the call today. So
I found Al Cody. I was like, we have to keep in contact. I love the session. I bought your book, and so I was planning to read it, and then this came up. So it's right here on my desk. So I'll be at the next session. So thank you.
thank you, Lashunda. Bye-bye.